So how do we actually get these media queries in here? People approach their media queries in different ways. Some people will establish different pixel values for where they want all of their layout changes to switch all at once. So maybe at 800 pixels, a bunch of stuff happens, and then again at 500 pixels, something else happens, and you kind of like use those same ones over and over again. Others, like myself, tend to be a little less rigid, and we just put them in where they're needed, no matter what the size is. So a lot of that's personal preference and also based on the standards of where you're actually working. So some people might want it to be done a certain way. But if we just want to approach it right now in a loose way where we just find out where a website breaks and then put the fix in there, we can do that by just changing the screen size. So I'm going to show you guys a little trick in Google Chrome. I'm actually using the Brave browser right now, which is it's basically Google Chrome. It uses the Chrome engine, but it has a lot of security features built into it. But if you're using Chrome, you will be able to see this. And if you're using something else, like Firefox, I know has a similar feature if you look for it. But on Chrome, you open your DevTools, and you should be able to see something up here that says Toggle Device Toolbar. And when you click it, it brings up something like this. If you don't see it, just Google how to display the device toolbar in Google Chrome, and I'm sure you'll find an answer. But what this does is it lets you emulate a device. So you have this little toolbar here. You can set specific widths of your screen. You can set the resolution and zoom. You can even select from some specific devices. So say I want to see what this looked like on an iPad, I could click iPad there. Say I wanted to see what it looked like on a Galaxy S5, I could do that. Doesn't look great on a Galaxy S5 right now. But yeah, it's just a little helpful way. It obviously doesn't beat actually testing your code on these actual devices, but it's helpful when you're doing your development. So I'm going to leave it on responsive, which lets me change it like this. And then we can also use this to figure out where our site's breaking. So you can see as I change it here, this number here is changing automatically. So it's going down. And what this lets me do is I can change it, and then once it gets to a percentage that I think doesn't look super great, I can use that pixel value in my media query. So let's give it a shot. So I'm getting smaller, everything's kind of scaling. Still legible, but let's say around, yeah, it's getting to be a little bit too small there. So let's try it out at 650. There, okay. Yeah, this is getting to be a little bit small here. So one thing that might help on a smaller screen is just making this text a little bit smaller. So if I wanted to, well, that actually might help it on a bigger screen. We'll try like 800 pixels or something. We'll try to make the font smaller when it hits 800 pixels. So if I jump back into my code, when I write my media query, remember you have the @media, and then you have the media type, in which case this is screen. For the most part, almost everyone uses screen now for mobile devices. Handheld, I've never actually seen it be used. Feel free to research that and let me know. But media screen, and then we want this to appear at a max of 800 pixels. So I could do max width 800 pixels, and now I can apply my styling. So if I want to change the font size, this is actually super easy because I'm using this percentage system here. If I had these all hard-coded to pixels, I would have to set a specific pixel for everything that I had set a different pixel value for. So if I had set like pixels here on this one, and here on this one, and here on this one, I would have to rewrite all of those in this media query. But because I'm using a percentage on the body, I can change this font size here, and it'll change all the rest of them. So got 130%. Oh wait, I forgot. I'm applying this to the body. 130%. Let's just take this down to 110% and see how that looks. So I have my media, my query here, and the styles that I'm overriding. So if I switch back here, Okay, and I'll refresh. We're at 1100 pixels here. Watch when it changes to 800. There, you see it got smaller? That's what a media query does. It checks that condition, and if it holds true, then it applies the styles. Alright, so we got a little bit more space here. But when you get down to 600 pixels or so, these columns are getting pretty small. So what we can do is change this so instead of being 3 columns, you just have a bunch of columns. You just have one column with each of these coming after each other. So right now, the reason that these 3 are showing as columns is because I am using Flexbox to make these 3. So I can overwrite that Flexbox that I have on my main. I'll post all this code then if you want to look through it, but right now I have my main that has the section and the aside. I have it set to display flex. So I need to get rid of this flex so that those elements, those children elements, display like they normally would as block elements. So I can go down here and on my main, so right now it's set to display flex. So one thing I could do is display block because that's what we want it to be, but you can also do display initial, and what this value does is it says reset this display attribute or property back to what it would normally be if you hadn't changed it. So I like doing this just so I'm not explicitly setting something to block if it's normally inline or vice versa. So I'm just gonna leave that at initial, and that's gonna overwrite that flex on the small screen. So I think I'm actually gonna forgot we were gonna do this on 600 pixels. So I'll just copy and paste that and change that to a 6 from an 8, and then take that out, put it down there. Okay, so I'll save that and refresh. So now I got below 600 pixels, and it's no longer displaying as Flexbox, it's just displaying one after another. It still is looking pretty weird, and that's because when I had these sections set up, I'll go up here, they all have a max width set, so they couldn't get too big. So I'm going to have to overwrite this. This is on my section. Max width 300 pixels. You can just set that to 100%. One more thing I have to do is I have a margin right set for keeping a little bit of spacing between them, so I want to overwrite that as well because I no longer need a margin. So just set it to 0. Now let's try that. Alright, so now it's looking a little bit better. It's still smack up against the side here, which I don't exactly like, so I just might throw a padding in there too. If I want the same padding the whole way around, I could do 1M or 1REM, which stands for root M, which I posted an article about what that means in the last Slack channel, last lectures, so if you haven't seen this yet, I recommend reading that. But it basically is being proportional to the body instead of just the parent element of the section. Okay, refresh that. Got a little bit of space in there now. It looks a little better. But my images, this one's too small, so it's not taking up the space. This one's big enough, so it is taking up the space. So if I want these to all take up 100% of the space that they have on smaller devices, I can do that by just styling my image tag here. I can do width 100%. There, now they're all looking the same. One thing you have to be careful is that your image can actually support being stretched to that width. So now when I get bigger, so now we're back in our 3 columns. Now we're back in our 1 column. And then we could just do a few little cleanup things. This is these list items here. If you had a navigation, maybe on a really small screen, you wanted them to display one after another. I could do in my nav. I'll show you the HTML real quick. I have a navigation tag with an unordered list of all of my navigation items. So I want to target list items that occur inside this navigation element, and I can just set them to display block. So now when I refresh them, they're all in a line. And then it's still looking a little squished, so I might, this is my H1 here, so maybe I'll do margin bottom, one rem, got a little space in there, and then I might even go far and add a margin bottom one, do a smaller one there. Alright, so it's getting a little more spaced out there. So that's basically how you do it. You can get very complicated with these, and images can always be a little bit challenging, but the best way is to just try resizing it and see where it breaks. So now we get pretty small. I don't know of any phones that are actually this small, but it still looks good. Getting bigger. We'll jump back into our columns. There we had our font size change, and then we're getting a lot larger. So now that you know how to use media queries and overall make a responsive site, the expectation now is that your final project will be fully responsive. So definitely recommend playing around with this. You'll have a homework assignment that I'm assigning today that will give you some practice in this. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So let me know if you have any questions, and we'll meet up next week.